the introduction of the judges.
Yep. Okay.
You are who and what?
Hello, I'm Marie Thomas. I'm in the technology space. I've been in technology leadership for many years with consumer goods companies, and recently started my own consulting firm, working around system implementations and engineering teams.
I'll go next. My name is Ali Ferruzzi. I spent a number of years in banking, and for the last 10 years I've been the CFO for a multinational project management engineering company. I do not have my own consulting company. I think that's about it.
Fantastic. My name is Robert Beamer. I'm excited to be here, and my industries are a combination of higher education and finance.
And I'm Tom Fain. I'm a retired securities lawyer. And this good-looking gentleman down here at the end is our leader. You want to say your...
I'm Jeff Thies. I am clinical faculty here, and I direct the Institute for Business Ethics and Sustainability and oversee the International Business Ethics and Sustainability case competition.
See, if I didn't introduce him, he would have arranged again next year for me to get up at 6 o'clock.
5:30.
5:30. It's dark. Okay, I have a form here which I'm supposed to read, but I prefer not to, so I'll just summarize it. I know you know the rules. Everybody has so far. You have 25 minutes. That, of course, means 25 minutes, not 26. And if you end up going over it, we will interrupt you, whether you're telling us that you're going to show us pictures of Hillary Clinton's wedding or not. We'll interrupt you anyway. After the 25-minute session, there will be questions from our panelists, which usually lasts about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll come out of character and we'll give you some feedback, which means usually compliments or criticism or handy hints for how to live the rest of your life. So with that said, please begin.
Okay, well, good afternoon, Monsanto's Board of Executives. We are Spend Consulting. I am Sigfriedi Andrade, I'm your legal consultant.
I'm Priya Dutta, I'm the ethical consultant.
I'm Andy Bing, I'm your financial consultant.
And I'm Nick Barkowski, the company expert.
We're so glad you're here today. So our agenda for today, we're going to start with the really nice company overview given by Nick. Then we're going to tag into the issue, and then we're going to go into our recommendation and what implications it might have, and then how we plan to implement that. And that leads us into our conclusion. So Priya will kickstart us.
So before we get into the company history and overview and dive deep into our problem, I just wanted to set the stage ethically for you. At its core, Bayer is facing a contradiction of company values. So Bayer's corporate culture is based on these words: life, leadership, integrity, flexibility, and efficiency to achieve its mission of science for a better life. Their current responses to the assumed challenges of Monsanto's Roundup oppose life in these ways. Legally, as farmers are being sued and denied settlements; environmentally, because glyphosate and its associated products and practices have unsustainable long-term effects; and socially, while workers are exposed to unsafe working conditions, and specifically Black farmers are disadvantaged regarding Roundup's risks. With the responsibility of Bayer and your team holds in the scope of the food industry, we implore you to consider our presented recommendations, primarily employing a bottom-up approach focusing on farmers' concerns and stakeholders' needs to appease such ethical challenges. But now I'll pass it over to Nick to go into the history and overview of the company.
Thank you, Priya. So I'm just going to give you guys a little history and company overview so we have a little framework for our current issue that we're going to try to address today. Monsanto, a subsidiary of the German company Bayer, has a long history and a pattern of unethical behavior and has damaged their reputation. They seem to have historically followed the shareholder theory of management rather than the stakeholder theory, focusing on short-term profits rather than long-term profits and sustainability. Monsanto is a chemical company that has produced some controversial products throughout its history. There were primary producers of PCBs in the United States for decades. They manufactured the chemical Agent Orange, a defoliant used in Vietnam that's tied to illness and thousands of veterans. In the past, PCBs, a major product of Monsanto, were used in paint, electrical equipment, and many other products from 1935 until 1977 until the EPA banned them for links to birth defects and cancer growths. PCBs were already known to have adverse skin and liver defects in humans and will linger in the environment for thousands of years. According to the Poison Papers Project, Monsanto knew as early as the 1960s that PCBs were harmful and continued to manufacture the chemicals. Monsanto and Bayer recently lost a major lawsuit that resulted in a loss of $698 million just because of PCBs. The Assistant Attorney General of Washington State, Bill Sherman, said the records show they knew the dangers but hid them from the public for profit. At the same time that Monsanto was telling the public PCBs were safe, they were literally graphing the potential liability against the lost profits and the public image to boost and the accountability and responsibility of being honest. And at the end of the day, Monsanto went for profits instead of public health and environmental safety. Monsanto's Vice President of Global Strategy, Scott Patrick, did not contest this authenticity, or did contest the authenticity of the documents used by the project. So he went against what the document said. A 174-page document published by the Journal of Public Health shows that Monsanto was aware of the public health and environmental problems PCBs did, but tried to cast doubt on the research. In 1969, Monsanto's study addressed the problems of PCB and continued a suggestion that the company should just sell the hell out of them while they can, quote, end quote. So an important part of corporate management's job is to identify the relevant stakeholders and understand the nature of their interests, powers, and alliances. Building beneficial relationships across corporate boundaries can build a company's positive reputation and help address critical and ethical challenges. Monsanto has done a very poor job of doing this. This leads us to our main point. Most recently, Monsanto and Bayer face stakeholder concerns regarding the development of their genetically modified foods, or GMOs. Monsanto's premier herbicide, Glyphosate, branded as Roundup both commercially and for personal use, has been linked to the development of cancer, particularly lymphatic. GMOs are perceived by much of the public as fooling around with the food and supply chain and fooling around with God's nature. They don't trust scientists who want to change their food. The Goliath Corporation of Monsanto has done a very poor job of communicating the benefits of GMOs. This shows Monsanto and Bayer have done little to restore the trust of the stakeholders and regain a good reputation. Given this history, I'll pass it to Siggy for more infos on GMOs.
Okay, so our issue ahead. Right now, the main thing that we're going to talk about is the glyphosate. It is a known carcinogen, and throughout the years there have been many claims that farmers and just people who have been in contact with the product developed lymphoma, which is a kind of cancer. But yeah, it is the main ingredient in Monsanto's Roundup weed killer. It harms the farmers, consumers, and the environment, basically anyone who's in contact with it. A recent study published by the Journal of the American Cancer Institute showed that the farmers who have been in contact and exposed to it for long periods of time show to the herbicide have more cancer markers than others. And now, the awareness of the issue, like the degree of awareness that the company has been something that was brought up in court a lot by the attorneys. And in court, the attorneys have argued that Monsanto knew glyphosate posed cancer risk, but withheld that knowledge from both the public and the regulators at the EPA. And that goes against everything that the business has said, like Priya explained, the life values and how their mission is to modify science for a better life. And they're prioritizing stakeholder theory over shareholder theory, and that's another reason they're being unethical. There has also been some contradiction with the things taking place and the statements they've been releasing, like Nick talked about. This is one statement they said right after this court settlement for a couple that both of them had lymphoma after being in contact with it. They said the EPA thoroughly assessed risk to humans from exposure to glyphosate from all registered uses and all routes of exposure and did not identify any risk of concern. He said that, but that was right after they reached almost like 100,000 lawsuits in the nature of human rights, and they paid over $11 billion in settlements for cancer claims. Yeah, now I pass it on to Freya to talk about Bayer's solution.
So given these problems with Roundup, this is Bayer's current solution. Starting in 2023, though it hasn't happened yet, we are keeping track of the progress. They will create new formulations to substitute glyphosate in Roundup, but only for the US residential lawn and garden market. They claim that they're only doing this to maintain litigation risk and not because of any safety concerns or concerns for human workers' rights or their safety. This action does not impact any of their glyphosate-based agriculture in the industrial or professional products. So the product currently is still being given out to farmers to use daily, but for the home and lawn and garden sector, it is being replaced. To give a little bit more context on the scope of this issue, as Nick mentioned, Monsanto has a huge history of transforming the agriculture industry. They industrialized agriculture. However, to maximize crop yields, they have done this at the expense of biodiversity and ecology. 80% of all genetically modified seeds are owned by Monsanto and now Bayer. And because of all of their efforts over the years, 90% of corn, soybean, and cotton crops are modified to be glyphosate tolerant. However, this raises a few more issues aside from the human safety risks regarding the food supply. So because of the repeated use of Roundup and their Roundup Ready seeds, which are glyphosate resistant, we are now seeing glyphosate resistant weeds in the farming industry. This means that because of the genetic uniformity and using the Roundup herbicide repeatedly, we are threatening the food supply because they are more susceptible to climate change events or epidemic pathogens. So this has a lot of very important implications in regards to the food supply, which is what Bayer is trying to solve. Because of all of these further issues regarding the environment, Bayer has an opportunity and also an obligation to challenge the status quo of conventional farming they have built up over the years and protect our food supply. But today we will be focusing on the ongoing litigation concerns of Roundup, but just to give a little bit of the scope of the problem. So because of all of this, your company and your team is faced with an ethical dilemma. On one hand, you can continue the glyphosate production for industrial use, so continuing Bayer's solution as is. That will obviously maintain conventional farming and probably be a little bit of easier implementation route, but this does risk further litigation and therefore human health and safety rights. On the other hand, you could extend the glyphosate replacement to all Roundup products, including that professional and industrial use. This obviously provides a challenging but crucial opportunity to influence agriculture and current modern farming practices, and it could give your team the opportunity to challenge the status quo and become an industry leader for modern practices. So moving into our team's recommendation. Span Consulting, we believe that Bayer should expand the glyphosate replacement to Roundup in industrial and professional use. This will not only protect workers' rights and thus human rights, but also from a business standpoint, it will help the company in the recent frequent lawsuits. Now I'll pass it over to Andy, and we're going to talk about the implications of our recommendation, specifically the finances.
Right, thank you, Kira. So, it doesn't matter how ethically sound and good our solution is, none of it actually matters if not financially feasible to actually implement, if it costs the company billions of revenue to actually put in place. So, this is Bayer's income statement for years 2020 and 2021. As you can see, Bayer spent 13 billion euros and 3 billion euros in those years respectively in litigation costs related to glyphosate and Roundup. And to really put those numbers into perspective, Bayer's global annual revenue for the years 2020 and 2021 were 41 billion and 44 billion respectively. So in 2020 alone, Bayer spent 31% of the global annual revenue on litigation costs related to glyphosate. And glyphosate is and Roundup is but one of many product lines that Bayer offers to its customers. So one product line is costing Bayer 31% of the global annual revenue. And that's not even the end of it, as of the 100,000 settlement cases against Bayer for glyphosate, there are still tens of thousands left unsettled and waiting for a payment or outcome. And as a response to that, Bayer has a $6 billion settlement plan put away for any future and current settlements that are waiting to be resolved. And that's really not good. We don't want this to happen again, and to prevent it, we want to replace glyphosate in all of Bayer's Roundup products. But the big question of doing that is the price. How much is it going to cost? Well, the good news is it's already been done. Bayer's already replaced glyphosate in certain countries that banned glyphosate. All they need to do is expand this solution to a global scale. Now, that does sound easier said than done, and they will be losing all their previous investments in glyphosate production and the sourcing of glyphosate. Yeah, but to really put those into perspective, in 2021, Bayer's largest capital expenditure project was for the sourcing of raw materials used in the production of glyphosate, and that was 60 million euros. Just a reminder that in 2021, Bayer spent $3 million in litigation costs. That's 3,000 million euros compared to the 60 they will lose on their investments. So compared to that, 60, 100 million, 200 million, that's nothing compared to thousands of millions that are spent in litigation costs because of glyphosate. They will be spending millions to save billions in the future. And that's not even the best part. The best part is, it is not expected for Roundup to lose traction after switching off of glyphosate. And also, if you look at the crop science division sales, despite being hit after COVID in 2020 and 2021, Bayer's crop science division sales have resumed to their previous pre-COVID levels of growth of about 20 to 30% annual revenue growth. So Roundup is not expected to lose traction. It is expected to go back to the way it worked after switching off of glyphosate. And there's even more to that. Even more benefits to that than switching off glyphosate. So this is Natria, Roundup's current most similar product and biggest competitor. So due to the recent controversies and health concerns relating to Roundup, a lot of Roundup's previous customer base has switched over to Natria as they view it as a similar product, but as a healthier and safer alternative. However, Natria and the herbicides like it is also not free from health concerns and controversies, as Natria is under numerous concerns of damage it does to wildlife and also to people's pets. So if Bayer could replace glyphosate in Roundup and make it a healthier, safer alternative to their competitive products, they could stand to gain a competitive advantage over their competitors, as their products will be the one that cares about its customers, that cares about ethics, that cares about the environmental sustainability, and overall, I think that's a pretty good trade-off for switching off glyphosate. And now I could bring it off to Siki for the legal implications of our solution.
Okay, thank you so much, Andy. Now we're going to talk about some legal implications. Here's the thing, we understand that changing a major component in like one of the company's main product can be quite daunting, but like Andy said, it was done in a few countries already. And the legal implications of it aren't many, actually. It just takes rewriting the company's model and its contracts with farmers and the scientific team in charge of developing the chemicals used in the plantations. And by doing this, Monsanto will minimize all the future lawsuits on the basis of human rights. We're talking about all those 100,000 lawsuits not even existing. And the only implication is that this might take a massive amount of lawyer work, but it's a massive amount of lawyer work now for almost no lawyer work in the future. And then also, just for an example, there's 25 countries, a couple of them mentioned by Andy, and many cities in the US that have already taken action to restrict or ban glyphosate. And Bayer actually has already completed the regulatory work to get hyaluronic acid approved and as an active ingredient in current existing products. And this, our plan, will take Bayer and Monsanto from a reactive position that it is right now, where it's just being called to court to defend itself, and it'll take it and make it and put it in a place where it's in a proactive position, where it's now preventing the company from even having to go into those court rooms and defend for itself. Well, now I'll pass it to Priya again.
So moving into the ethical standpoint, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about those life values. And right now, with the current response to Roundup, these are a few of the implications of the response. From an ethical lens, human beings have the rights to be treated as ends, not merely as means to other ends. Because we are human, we inherently possess value, and that's it. But right now, there's a violation of workers' rights to dignity and safe working conditions, as mentioned, with farmers being denied lawsuits and being put at risk every day with the use of this herbicide. This results in significant tangible harm to farmers' physical health, emotional well-being, but also furthermore the environment with the biodiversity loss and impacts of the glyphosate-resistant weeds. However, with our recommendation, we have a few ethical opportunities for your team and the company. First and foremost, the company can practice and maximize its provided tangible good and practice virtues aligned with its core values. This obviously helps the company out in a reputation sense, but already Monsanto and Bayer have very high ethical standards, so we are just trying to help you live by those and really uphold those for the global community. In another sense, you can make progress towards a few UN Sustainable Development Goals, specifically 2 and 8, which I will get into a little bit more. But with our recommendation, Bayer can make progress towards fostering sustainable agriculture, becoming that industry leader to challenge conventional farming. And by spearheading these initiatives for improving food security, in the process you can support farmers' well-being in the workplace. And furthermore, regarding the specifics with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, one of the targets for UN SDG 2 is to ensure sustainable food production systems and implement resilient agriculture practices which can strengthen the capacity for the adaptation to climate change, which is obviously a very important issue. So by replacing glyphosate, that can help out with those glyphosate-resistant weeds. And furthermore, protecting labor rights, especially in these high value added and labor intensive sectors that your workers are contributing to. Now we're going to move on to a little bit of the implementation. So the question is this solution feasible? Andy spoke about it in a financial aspect, Siggy spoke about it in a legal aspect. But first and foremost, over here, we believe that this solution will already adhere to the values that Monsanto and Bayer live by every day. So from a value standpoint, it makes sense and it adheres to what you are already doing and the innovations you have made in the agriculture industry. From a tactical standpoint, there have been recent articles and research studies that have found that there is hope in the process of banning glyphosate and replacing it with other ingredients. Some of these alternatives, along with the pelargonic acid that has been used in other countries, include bioherbicides, mechanical and thermal weed treatments. As of right now, Bayer has not revealed what they are replacing glyphosate with in Roundup for the lawn and garden use, but we hope that that can also inform our future decisions with your team and with the rest of Roundup. And now I'll pass it off to Nick to talk about further implementation and the conclusion.
Absolutely. So, conclusion and our solution approach. I'm going to throw in a few ideas that aren't really cost heavy and we believe can help sustain what is going on with glyphosate at the moment, also concluding all of these thoughts into one part. So, in summation, Monsanto did not do stakeholder analysis and stakeholder mapping effectively, and they lost the credibility of the trust and credibility of many of their stakeholders. That's very difficult to earn back. Now when they change people's foods with GMOs and claim that the chemical is not dangerous, people don't really believe them. Major unethical actions damage the reputation to the point where it's almost impossible to regain that credibility. Regarding Roundup, it is still in litigation on whether it causes cancer due to conflicting studies, and Monsanto has won these recent litigations. However, because they sacrificed trust in the past, it's hard to regain that shareholder trust. Are they hiding information? Are they telling us the truth? And are they being fully ethical with us? But even when they win in court, do the stakeholders believe them? So how can we regain the trust of Monsanto and the stakeholders? Rule number 1 is just to be honest. We're going to offer the following ideas we think can help restore the stakeholder confidence to the company. The company should establish a stakeholder audit department that helps access all research, marketing, and production documents and meetings. This unit should report directly to the board of directors and serves as an audit of company ethics to prevent any unit or person from violating any company ethical standards. This could prevent hidden info that has also been like problems with companies with the Boeing 737 MAX and the Volkswagen emissions crisis. We can avoid things like that with an ethics audit department. The company has not had strong public relations, and they should be using advertising in the media and to inform the general public about the benefits of GMOs. GMOs are known to drastically reduce the need of the spread of herbicide chemicals and improve crop yields by 15%. They have not honestly discussed the cost benefits of GMOs with the general public, and this is something we would like to encourage. The company should adopt a full cycle testing of its products, which involves collecting information on lifelong environmental impacts of the product. It should evaluate the full impacts from extraction of raw materials to manufacturing and distributing and then disposal of them as well. The goal is to minimize adverse health and environmental impacts, ultimately. It has been described as the cradle to grave method. And then the company should adopt a policy of just being honest with the chemical, herbicide, or GMO might have some harmful effects, but also has significant benefits that outweigh the costs. They need to communicate the cost, and they need to say that it can be mitigated and be honest about the cost to benefit analysis. While there may be costs associated with the use of their product, people respect the honesty. Regarding glyphosate and Roundup, the company should be honest about the potential cancer risks and aggressively promote methods of safe use. They should offer training to farmers through outreach and via the internet on how to protect yourself to exposure. They should offer cell safety masks and skin protection for the safe use of the product. And the company needs an improved crisis management plan that is proactive, focuses on the answer, not the question, has a social media presence, and honestly addresses the challenges presented by being a chemical and science-based company. Now, Monsanto has been fighting in courts across the country defending their herbicide. Plaintiffs has argued that the studies show it causes lymphoma, while others argue it don't. Monsanto has had an ongoing public relations problem with GMOs developed by the company. Some believe the toxins alter GMO grains, and this could lead to health problems. GMOs have major advantages for the farmers and some advantages for the environment, but stakeholders and chemists do not like people messing with their food, and they have failed to adequately provide non-market stakeholders with the confidence that they are safe. And so our job is to gain that trust back and follow the iron law of responsibility, which the iron law of responsibility says that in the long run, if a company does not use its power in a socially aware and responsible way, they will lose it.
Thank you so much for your time, and we open feedback and questions.
Okay, now we move to the question portion of our program. And I think that we'd like to start with Marie.
Let's see, so maybe first question is, it sounds like you've done a little research around what the alternative would be. And that's still the biggest question that remains, is if we walk away from glyphosate, what can be used? And we're thinking the residential option could apply to be used in commercial, but if I understood, you're thinking an impact to the farmers to using alternatives in terms of their process, or is that?
There might be an impact to the farmers for sure, obviously, because the approach in lawn and garden is obviously very different than an industrial approach. But as you mentioned, we do hope to use what other states and countries around the world have been using in regards to this switch. But as Nick mentioned at the end, obviously some of this will take new practices in training the farmers and their processes. But given all the litigation concerns and concerns voiced from farmers by using this product, we hope that in the long term it will definitely better their experience and use with it.
Do we know projected cost impact of just, I think I heard 11 or 6 billion is set aside for pending lawsuits?
Yes.
And that's over what kind of time horizon?
Just like the next couple of years, as like for the current ongoing ones, like the 100,000 plus around them. So there is possibly more in the future, but the 6 billion just for current ones that are ongoing right now.
Likely we'd need some capital in order to do some more research, so that capital would be probably adding to that
Right.
6 billion. Yeah.
And that's $6 billion. We would like to get that number reduced or at least maintained by those concluding things we said with the ethics audit team and the internet safety program training for the farmers. We hope to avoid any future conflict because, you know, if we have them do the online training and they fill out a form and they sign, you might get yourself out of those problems that they may come up in the future. because they're already educated and know how to deal with that issue.
Thank you. I don't have any question, I'll pass it on.
You've got,
Well, for the moment, but I have.
but everybody else has to get it.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Do we know how the market is split between non-commercial and commercial use?
Yes, about 80% of it is for commercial use, and only about 20% is sold out of department stores and online, et cetera.
So could we just reformulate the non-commercial part, leave the commercial part as is, label it appropriately, like you do with everything else that's harmful, and say, go about your business?
I believe that that's an achievable goal, especially for Monsanto, just as long as they're honest. Like we said, we just want, if there is a problem with the herbicide, don't put people in the dark about it, especially your stakeholders and especially the general public. You know, you want to be honest with them, because then if they choose to continue to purchase and use the chemical and they see any bad things happen, they already understood the risk. So that's really what we're trying to get at.
And if I understood from you guys, the polygonic acid, is that, because I thought I heard two conflicting things, is it already in a formulation, or it's being looked at to be in a formulation?
Well, it's been approved. It's not in a formulation yet. They're in the process. They just started the process. So not yet, but we'll get there.
And this is just for Monsanto, though.
Yeah.
Other companies do use this
Oh,
product.
Yeah.
Because it looks like the other companies you met, Natria, I believe, was the competitor, right?
Mhm.
Even though they are the safer version, they got their own concerns.
Right.
So sounds like any variation we might go to, going more down the road, someone says, oh, well, it does A, B, and C to me, so
Right.
are we really swapping one problem for another rather than just label this thing correctly and go about our lives?
Exactly, yeah, and I think that might be why a lot of the public has concerns about the company. And this is the thing, I don't think it's necessarily Roundup we're really so much concerned about, or glyphosate. It's the lack of knowledge behind it, and the lack of training, and the misuse of it in terms of how to farm properly with it. So switching or non-switching, we really just want to gain that trust back that whatever we sell to our customers, they believe in. That's primarily what we want. Yeah.
So, to add on to that a little bit, so we talked about how barriers are to replace glyphosate in some of their products in certain European countries, and the one that they replaced glyphosate with already, it's the main ingredient is vinegar combined with other chemical additives too. So it's actually a organic herbicide rather than an inorganic one. So compared to that, it's relatively way more healthier and safer for the environment.
Any idea on the efficacy comparisons between glyphosate, including formulations, and the more holistic ones?
I believe they're similarly effective. An example of like some of the various states and cities that have applied this alternative is, for instance, Seattle, Washington. They have a process in place where they have banned glyphosate from their city, and they've been using this alternative because they found that glyphosate and Roundup specifically harmed their native plants and threatened their native plants. So they've been using the organic first practice, as well as in Tucson, Arizona, they use an organic first practice, and these are two very biodiverse cities. It's been effective for those cities, so we do have hope if we do replace it, it can be effective for across the country.
And then to piggyback off what Priya said, yeah, and what we would like to do with those areas that are doing things with the organics, we would like to promote that throughout the company, like I said, through online presence, through advertising. We want to raise people's awareness just about what Monsanto is doing positively. And then hopefully, if that is, the organics are successful, maybe you can start to divide things into, let's say, 20% organic, and then the 10-year goal be, let's be to 60% organic in 10 years. And then when the public's aware about your attempt and progression, they're going to stick around with the company far more.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Span Consulting. I'm citing kind of some dissonance here. So the court of public opinion obviously seems to rule in favor of people that have been affected and have lymphoma or leukemia or something associated with the degradatory effects of having used Roundup over the years and are now bearing a burden with blood cancer. On the other hand, it doesn't seem to be illegal because the EPA or the governing powers that be have assessed the risks to humans from exposure to glyphosate and all the registered uses, and exposure does not identify any risks of concern. Again, those are dynamic tensions. So again, to Ali's point, why can't we proceed with the course at hand? Or do you, on the other hand, really think that there might be a law coming down, legislation preventing the future use? Because this is really important to know and understand as we move forward, because we're investing obviously heavy capital into one direction or another.
Right. So I can go. So the EPA might approve it, but in Europe, the EU and the council around that has been considering banning glyphosate across all of the EU. So recently they've been talks about it in 2022, and like they're planning to end the renewal of the license for glyphosate, which was renewed last time in 2017. So it's about to expire. So they're considering just not renewing it and having it completely banned all of the EU very soon in the future.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I'd like to speak for my team that like we do believe there might be a law coming, just because like I said, 25 countries and many cities in the US already banned it or restricted it. And something else that's in the future, but if you're talking about right now, it's not illegal. And the people going against Monsanto in court, they don't have the law on their side, but they have all these other people. It's just like too many coincidences, like all these other farmers with the same symptoms, with the same thing, using the same product, and just the history of all the over 100,000 cases that they won against Monsanto. So it's like there's no law, but there's like this evidence in their favor.
And absolutely, and on top of that, you know, we may not, you know, if glyphosate doesn't get outlawed, right, which is very possible, and we want to continue with the sales of glyphosate, we just want to educate to eliminate any sense of mitigation and potential legal issues in the future through, communication with the farmers and the general public. That way, if they find something out, it's not some, smack to the face. They already could have assumed this could have happened, right?
Well, let me ask you more about that. So that's a great point. So, you're charged with kind of giving us a path forward. What would an educational platform look like to our consumers, particularly the commercial consumers?
If you want me to be honest, I think first and foremost, you should have to sign up for a thing online, whether how long the duration of the training may be. I haven't really even considered that much, but I think there should be an online course where at the end you have to sign a professional waiver stating your knowledge of these potential effects to your body, how to be safest with it, and how to proceed amongst your employees in your farm in terms of keeping the public safe, yourself safe, and the company safe. That's the most important thing.
I think going along with that, forming community groups among farmers could help out a lot, especially with just group education. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, Black farmers in particular are disadvantaged with the ingredients and safety recommendations listed on the Roundup labels, because literacy levels are lower in the community, and there's been a lot of ongoing social activism in that sense as well. So I think that sense of community-based learning and teaching could also help groups among themselves teach each other and learn about the ongoing risks of the product.
Right, and I guess just to finish the thought of those ideas we pitched at the end, we wanted to be very, very minimally cost damaging, right? Implement an audit team for ethics, do some online training for your farmers, be honest to the public. These are things that we don't want to detriment profits, but to boost back that stakeholder trust and the community's trust.
If we're bleeding 11 billion in legal bills, I think we're willing to invest a little bit to educate our public. You cited, I think Wells Fargo, you cited Volkswagen and some other. Yes, thank you. So those are case studies, obviously, in recent history where companies have had to get out in front of the truth because the truth is front and center in the court of public opinion and elsewhere, and make internal investments in order to convince public that it's worthwhile to make those investments, and also that they can be better educated about the decisions they make, whether they pursue their products or not. So I think internally it might make sense for us to make such a leap if it benefits us. Obviously, in the long run, it benefits our consumers. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's the dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell. Over to you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And just like earlier, we were saying, you know, glyphosate, we don't gotta kick it out the door. We can implement, you know, percentage, through time, like 10 years, let's get to 20%, 20 years, let's get to 60% organics. It's just to sustain the profit, not to shake any farmers' doors, or, you know, shake any feathers, ruffle feathers, and just sustain the brand of Monsanto. That's what we're trying to do in Bayer, so.
It's been an interesting presentation. Unfortunately, as a lawyer, I could argue about this until about midnight. But that's not part of my mandate. So let me confine myself to something that bothers me internally to what you've done here. If you make a product whose sole purpose it is to kill something green, don't you know that there's going to be risk? And shouldn't you advise the purchaser of that risk? Why haven't you treated that issue? Now, he made some suggestions which go to that issue, but I didn't hear anything in the presentation about here's the issue. It's in the inherent nature of this beast to kill stuff. So I think your solution is tell the user, sign on a dotted line here. You drink this stuff, you might die.
Yeah, well, Monsanto does have to, we as a company, we have to accept the fact that we are a science-based and chemical-based company, and I think there are just natural problems with, you know, environmental hazards that come along with that. And yes, we would like to boost the education on that, and I think that's where they've fallen short in the past. Like that quote I read earlier, when one of the board executives found out about it, he said, let's just sell the hell out of it till we can't anymore. And we don't want that to be the case with the company.
That's what made America great. What year was it approximately that it was discovered this thing was a carcinogen?
Well, I mean, I could read a little information I have about it, but I don't know if you would want that. It's been pretty recently that most of these studies have been done, but the cases have been ongoing for about 20 years or so.
Okay, but you also said earlier, somebody did, that it was most frequent in long-term usage. Short-term usage apparently doesn't do it. So I come back to the education point. It seems like that's where we ought to be coming from.
Absolutely.
I believe that the education is definitely like a viable part of our solution that we should focus on, but I think kind of what we focused on a little bit in our presentation is just because of this like ongoing litigation with the farmers, it's just damaged the reputation of Monsanto, of your team, of Bayer as a whole. And so that's why we believe that replacing the chemical can do a lot better and benefit more people in the long term, which is why we focused a little more on that.
Replace the and that would be a good first step.
And I think what Fry was describing is we just want to give you guys avenues and pathways. We don't want to say let's replace Roundup, right? That's not necessarily feasible, but we also don't want to say let's ignore the farmer who's using it. So what we want to do is take kind of a collective approach and give you guys, you know, maybe a fork in the road or maybe a couple of ways you could take the direction of our recommendations and implement them in time as you would like. Yeah.
Okay, feedback to govern your future life. That's what our feedback section is about. We got these suggestions.
So
Thank you for the questions.
Yeah, it was really
Thank
good.
you for the questions and your time and listening. We appreciate it.
Alan, feedback?
I thought you guys did a really nice job with the topic. I know this is very involved and it's multifaceted and it's not black and white to note our attorney's analysis, because you could argue either way. But your presentation of the material in the roles that we were to be in, I think was really well done and thought out. And your responses to the pushback questions that you got from us as the group that wants to get out from under something or to figure the path of least resistance forward, showed that you guys have looked into the topic, I think, pretty deeply, and you have a reasonably good understanding of the key facts in this case. Because I know a lot about it on my own personally, on the side. I can see that you guys have done, you know, a lot of digging into it. Overall presentation was really, really well done. Ideally, you want to read off of things as little as possible, but sometimes when you have a lot of material to read, I know that can be challenging. So that's just something I'd say in the future is try to redo things so you can kind of engage in a presentation format or have cues on the screen that'll prompt your memory of what you're gonna say, but overall, really nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob?
I don't disagree. I think, yeah, the messaging was clear. You told us what you were gonna tell us, you told us, and then you told us what you told us. And that's great. It's blessedly simple to have that. I do think that the stakeholder analysis with all the different folks involved, possibly some visual flow chart of kind of how things operate, especially with the option A, option B, option C, would be nice, just to, again, simplify the simple. There was one other point that I just had front center, and I hope I didn't forget it. I'll let Tom go, and then I'll reserve the right to just say one more thing as soon as he comes back to me. I apologize.
Are you
Overall,
ready
nice
to
job.
go, and you wanna go?
Yeah.
Mr. Doubter. You wanna go?
Well, either way, go ahead.
I don't have any feedback that was not embedded in the questions that I asked you. So I'm gonna pull a Mark Twain on you and tell you that he's one of my favorite people. And one of my favorite things that he said, you might wanna remember this, was being talked to death is a terrible way to die, so I have nothing else to say.
I don't have a whole lot to say. I thought it was really well done. Appreciated the way you presented confidently. Agree with the point made in terms of reading, trying to limit that a little bit. I know there's a lot to cover. Definitely the message was clear and main areas of concern that you presented. I also liked how you each stayed within your roles and key areas of focus and worked well as a team on that. Maybe on the implementation slide, just agree it could have gone to a little more detail just to show maybe what cost impact would it be, hiring other people to take on those roles, or just maybe additive to others' functions, just organizationally how that would work. But maybe that's just a call out. But otherwise, really well done.
Did you
Thank
find
you.
that piece running around in your brain or something?
Oh, yeah, I don't wanna add any, I mean, look, I think it was really well said. This is an issue that's near and dear to so many people, not just farmers, but, lymphoma almost killed my dad. And yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, him walking around with me with Roundup, like, do this, let's do this every weekend. It's hard to ignore that, so it affects a lot of people, and it's gonna continue to. And so I think, maybe playing to your advantage at the beginning, telling a story. You don't have to say, hey, you're not condemning, and I don't want, remember, you're consultants, it's the consultant's dilemma. You have to be on the inside and be on the outside at the same time. And remember, we hired you. So, or I hope we did. Long story short, there is that emotional valence that you could tap into with this, because I think it affects more people than maybe you might think from the outside. But that can also be a slippery slope too, because we are in a professional setting. All that to say, I'm done. No more noise from me. Nice job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for participating.